There we go. Okay, looks like we're ready to get started. All right, there we go. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, AHA members, and welcome to the conversation on the future of the Midsummer Show. I'd like to welcome Kelsey Berglund to kick us off. Kelsey? So we're going to go ahead and get started. These are our panelists. Today we have Deborah Johnson, AHA President, Cynthia Richardson, she's the Youth National Show Commission Vice Chair, Stan Morey, the Executive Director for AHA, Kelsey Berglund, AHA Staff Member, Director of Events and Marketing, Josh Quinnis, an APAHA Representative, Katie Harvey, an Amateur Committee Representative, and Grace Smith, the AHYA President. Thanks, Kelsey. Sorry it took us a couple minutes to get our technology going, but we're all here now. So thanks for joining us. To begin, I want to remind us all of the vision statement of the Arabian Horse Association. We exist for the growth in the number of people having a passion to own and enjoy the Arabian, half-Arabian, and Anglo-Arabian horse. And further, in our mission statements, there are two that engage around the conversation tonight. Increased participation in activities involving the Arabian, half-Arabian, and Anglo-Arabian horse. And ensure services and benefits that are valuable and convenient for our AHA members. Together, we have been resilient as we navigate our world with COVID-19. And we do have the permission and opportunity to rethink, recalibrate, and reset our AHA. Let me do a quick walk down memory lane that will help us all understand how Midsummer was created. In 2020, many conversations were had with the emergency response team daily, and we began to have town halls like this one. The first was March 31st of 2020, and the second was April 28th. The announcement of Midsummer came out May 19th. And we've searched the minutes and there was no vote taken for Midsummer 2020. It was just the result of swift action of the board to benefit our members who wanted to show and move AHA forward during a pandemic. There were a multitude of reasons for the show to be created, and the Youth National Show Commission was tasked with incorporating the classes from the Canadian Nationals and putting on the show in just 8 short weeks. In doing this, it expanded the Youth National Show by 4 days, although Youth Nationals had actually been shortened by 1 day because it had been declining. One of the quick fixes was the utilization of the U.S. national trophies as awards as we had them available. At Convention 2020, which was another undertaking to move to a virtual format, we approved Resolution 1620, which addressed allowing one of our national events to host classes from another national event if that event was canceled, as long as it was done in concert with 2 commissions involved and the board of directors approval. So with that in place, the board in March of 2021 approved AHA to move forward with the Midsummer National Championship Show in July of 2021. Again, our Youth Commission did a fantastic job of putting on the show in July of 2021, which was supported by our membership and our exhibitors. Then, in August of this year, the board postponed a decision on the 2022 Midsummer. And in September, the board voted to have a Midsummer Championship Show going forward. The commission and staff then began to operationalize moving forward to 2022 and hit a few snags with it not being a national championship show. So due to this, the board will discuss this again in December, and we are here today to hear input and perspectives from our members, from you. Our board is here today to listen and to learn from our AHA members and our exhibitors. In the next few minutes, we'll hear from Cynthia Richardson as the commission has moved forward in planning about some innovative and very unique opportunities for Midsummer for it to become its own identity. We're going to hear from some numbers from Stan about the Youth and Midsummer shows. And we're also very excited to have our own AHYA president, Grace Smith, here to speak on behalf of our youth. We'll also hear from Katie Harvey representing the perspectives of the amateurs and Josh Quinnis representing our professionals. In this time together, we encourage you to use the chat feature in Zoom, and we will be taking live questions at the end of the presentation. We encourage your thoughtful conversations in this hour. And in order for everyone to be heard, we'll ask that you speak once for a few minutes. And the chat is an excellent place to comment if you're in agreement with a previous speaker, so that we continue to have a variety of topics as the live speakers come on. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Cynthia Richardson, Vice Chair of the Youth National Show Commission. Cynthia?
Everybody, thank you for the opportunity to speak, Deborah. I appreciate it. And the screen up pretty much talks about what I want to say tonight, and it's an opportunity for growth at all levels. Midsummer was developed in kind of a crazy way, but actually it went forward and we had a great time, and it's actually grown, and Stan will give you those numbers. But what we want to do now is, we were directed before to just use the classes that were naturally had been offered in Canada. And now we can do our own class list, which is a pretty exciting event for us, because we want an identity that's different from any other national show. And we have that opportunity to do it because we don't have to follow any restrictions. So what we're doing is looking at our own identity, which comes down to having gold, silver, and bronze instead of just a champion and reserve. We will completely change the ribbons, completely change everything that's done there. There'll still be a top 10 if we're allowed to do a national event. But Midsummer, really is going to give us a chance, I think, to offer something for the family. And we'd like to do some classes that combine our youth and our adults, because we found last year and the year before, but especially last year, because people can plan for this, that there was a number of horses that, say, mom or dad rode, and then the youth came back and rode or showed at halter or showed in performance doing something. So we'd like to offer some combination championships, and we'd be the only breed that could do that, which I think is pretty exciting. And then this is kind of a way to reinvigorate the Arabian industry. One of all of our goals is to have something for everybody to do and to be involved, and to have an affinity for AHA. And if we can offer something that's a little bit different, and being realistic, not many of us can afford to own the champion Western pleasure horse, but they could own the champion horse that belongs to a family. And so it's an opportunity for people to reach a different level than they've ever had before, all the way from the grassroots, all the way to maybe a family championship that they would have. And then we can offer, obviously, some other classes, some pro-ams. We could offer some classes. We have select amateur at nationals, but we don't have select amateur owner. So we could do some classes like that. So next slide. So the new exciting and award structure, I talked a little bit just about bronze, silver, and gold. Having been a nationals judge a number of times and watched all these competitions, there's sometimes very little difference in between second and third. And so, you're awarded a champion and your reserve, and that's really, really exciting. But that third place horse has never gotten any recognition. And so we want to change that at our show and be able to offer that as we go down. The alternatives to this previous same old, again, I talked a little bit about this on the previous screen, is that we really have no restrictions. We can open this up with what time allows, obviously, and what our exhibitors want. And so that's one of the reasons tonight we're reaching out and ask that you put your thoughts or your whatever you would like as classes, or something you would like to see that's maybe a little different than's been offered at the other national shows, and put it in the chat line, and then we can add it to the list that the Youth Show Commission's already come up with of classes that we would like to add. But just to kind of get your thoughts going, we would maybe have a Western pleasure for 3-year-old junior horse, and one then that's for 4- and 5-year-old junior horses. So, look at family combinations, look at pro-ams, look at what you would like to have jackpotted, look at just new innovative ways to look at a class that says, at no other nationals can I do this, so can we do it there? The AHA has some really great ideas and always has, but we've sometimes really been reluctant to be the ones to step out and do this. And I think last year we started the Ranch Horse Championships, which I really applaud them for, and it was a huge success. And so that's why I'd like to take next summer to a different level and be able to just do some things so that we're the leaders in the industry and not the followers. Let's make this, quarter horse has their nationals in their world. And, you know, we can essentially have US nationals and Canadian nationals and youth nationals. And now we're going to have a midsummer nationals, which is different than any of the rest. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Cynthia. I think we'll turn it over to Grace, our AHYA president.
Hi, thank you for having me. Number one, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really glad that you guys are willing to hear from the youth's perspective on this too. The AHYA board in our last meeting has voted in favor of holding Midsummer and Youth Nationals together. But as long as the youth focus is still at the Youth Nationals show, we really want to make sure that we still get that special feel for all of us as youth, and we want to make sure that it's still the show we've been looking forward to. I know since when I was really little and I just started in this industry, I always would look to Youth Nationals and Midsummer, as soon as it changed, to be like my final show, my place to show what I've been working for. And I know as long as we keep that youth emphasis on this show, it will be a really good idea. We see the impacts and the importance of having the two shows together for money-wise, and we appreciate the idea of having it still be national show for the youth and more of a championship for the adults. So I really appreciate you guys having me on here and willing to hear from me. So I appreciate that. Oh no, sorry, my meeting. Thank you. Sorry, my meeting got a little messed up here. I don't know what happened. Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to say that, yeah, as long as we keep the youth emphasis on this show, I feel like this is a great idea for the industry, and it brings lots of great ideas into this. So, thank you.
Thanks, Grace. We were going to have Stan report on some stats from last year.
Yeah, and you guys can see this. I mean, we started out in 2020 with 1,230 horses. Youth before that was, I think, operating in around 670, maybe somewhere along in there. I started with youth their first year. I've been at that horse show every year, but I also saw in the years before 2020 that it was declining, not in rapid numbers, but just a little bit every year. So as you can see here, 1,230 horses, 4,225 entries in 2020. Same thing again this year, 1,424 horses, 5,175 entries. And again, I don't want anybody to just jump all over that, but we all know this. Okay, that was without qualifications. We need to look at that. Okay, we need to understand that. But the thing that you need to also think about too is that you cannot deny that the youth part of this thing went up. Okay, the youth numbers went up, not just the midsummer numbers or the adult numbers, the youth numbers went up with this thing. And that's what we were trying to figure out and what we were trying to do when we started thinking about this is how can we get this thing kicked off and going forward? Folks, this thing landed in our lap and it was a success and it's still a success. I think we can do this and do a different format. That's always been something that we always wanted to do different with AHA from a national standpoint. But I think we can do this with this horse show and still recognize the youth. I'm totally in favor of the Friday and Saturday night being youth only classes. I don't think any of us have an issue with that. So it's not about that, but it is also offering our members another way to go with something.
We're going to throw this one to Cynthia.
We are. Okay, let me get chat out of the middle of sorry, I was reading the chat lines. I apologize to that. So when we were told that the board had put off their vote until September, that was fine. And then when in September, the board actually approved it as a championship show, then there was a number of us that got together with staff and tried to see how this would work. And I'll be quite frank, the the show system right now at AHA is antiquated. It's one of the last things that's going to be updated because we needed to do some other things to make our business run. And so they're in the process of doing that. But when we never envisioned that a national show would operate with something that wasn't a national show. And so it's frankly, the system right now is not able to handle it. And what does that really mean to you all as exhibitors? That means that you would have to enter with, if the horse competes in both shows, you would have to enter on totally separate entry forms, that all of your trainers would have to essentially enter the horses twice. Unfortunately, because of the cost of the show, the stalling fees would have to be the same regardless if you're in one show or both shows, because once you put shavings down, then that stall's paid for the rest of the show. So there's a lot of different problems. And then how we report to USEF and to USDF and all of those sort of things, and whether or not we can use the same panel of judges is still up in the air a bit. So we started going back and forth trying to figure out how we could make this work. And we hit a lot of roadblocks. And so then we said, well, maybe the best thing to do is to go back to the board and say, you know, should this be indeed a national show rather than just a championship? So one of the things I think, and Stan just touched on this just a bit, is that this year there are qualifications. And so you have to go to some shows and hopefully to some regionals before you actually come to midsummer. And as we all know, not everybody wants to go to a nationals. There's lots of people whose regionals are their nationals, and that's wonderful, and that's the way it should be. And then there are some horses that obviously this year are not at the national level. They need to stay, you know, even at the local level, or maybe possibly can move up to their regionals, but it's not an end all. And we have always had conflicts with our regions running at the same time because we've always been bunched together. You know, I've been involved in this industry for a long, long time, as many of you know, and we've always had, I'm from Region 8 most of the time. I was in Iowa for a while and in California for a while, but we always had conflicts with our other regions and trying to spread them out so we could go for more than one regions, and especially people who wanted to chase sweepstakes. Obviously, they were trying to get as many regionals as they could. So this isn't a new problem that there's going to be some conflicts, but I do think that it's what happened with COVID has caused all of us to look at our model. You know, are we doing the best to service our people? And, you know, I think there's been a couple of regions that have changed their dates, which had nothing actually to do with us, but just trying to separate themselves out a little bit. I think lots of things are going to change, and we have to embrace that change and do the best way we can with it. So I don't think that, you know, it's an end all. Some people are going to want to come to a national event and be qualified to come for a national event and should be there to ride. And other people are going to go to their regions. And, you know, maybe Josh will talk about this later, but to me, if I was a trainer, I'm going to have some horses in my barn that are regional horses and some horses in my barn that are national horses. So I think you'll find that the trainers then will be able to, and the exhibitors will be able to pick and choose which ones they want to go to. And the more we can offer that allows our people some opportunities to participate, the better all of us will be, not just, you know, not just an individual region, or not just, you know, those two regions that have worked this out between themselves. So I really hope you'll give this some thought about how much this can help our industry. That's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Cynthia. I think we've had a lot of good conversation go on in the chat, and we want to continue that. We'll try to get a couple of questions answered. The 2022 dates, when I look at the championship shows, a lot of the regions have made some bold moves in changing their dates. So make sure you stay tuned to that in terms of the movement away from the Youth Nationals dates, just so you're aware of that. And I think we'll try to get some more questions answered in the chat, because I do believe we want all our shows to be successful, whether trying to summarize what's in the chat, you know, whether it's Canada or the regionals, you know, we are all in this together. So let's continue the chat, and I think we'll turn it over to Josh Quintus and then Katie Harvey. Does that sound good, Kelsey? Okay, Josh, you're up.
So you If you want me to talk about Midsummers, I mean, we went to Midsummers in 2019. Just my barn alone, we took 11 horses to that particular horse show. And I think that Midsummers or Youth Nationals at that time was starting to get under the 400 mark as far as horses were. And, you know, I think the highest that there was at Youth Nationals was somewhere around 950 when it was in Albuquerque, and it was a pretty good sized show. So we've been seeing the decline with the kids, with the horse show. They just have so many things to do compared to where 1993 when we did this, families all revolved around the kids showing, and now that there's a lot of different activities for the parents to do. So I feel like that's one of the reasons that has contributed to the kids, their show getting smaller. That next year in 2020 was, there's no one that can actually describe what happened in 2020 with the COVID that went on, and was there going to be a horse show? Was there not going to be a horse show? USCF was putting a lot of mandates on us, and AHA stepped right up to the plate. And this was one of the most brilliant ideas in the world, and it catapulted this horse show to 1,400 entries or 1,200 entries that year. And it became a big deal again. And even though it was another national championship horse show with Canada would not be able to cross the border, and the year before we had the big, the VS problems with the middle states that we had, not getting to the Canadian country. But now with the Canadian borders being shut down, this was a great avenue. I think it worked out great. We went from, my personal barn went from 11 horses to 22 horses, and the adult riders wanted to show. And so then 2021, when it came along again, my barn went to 27 horses at the Oklahoma City show and the Midsummer show. The kids number stayed about the same, but the adult riders started catching on. I think that this particular horse show, offering and being a national championship, is kind of like the quarter horses have in Congress in the world. It's kind of like the saddlebreds having the World Show and the Royal. Not quite sure the Appaloosas have the World Show here in Fort Worth, if they have another show, but we kind of modeled ourselves after the quarter horses and the saddlebreds as far as the show's going. We have room for another national championship horse show. And I think that if we made it just a Class A horse show, we have a lot of Class A horse shows. And I'm very fortunate to live in Texas where we can show almost every weekend. I've talked with several of my friends that are in areas that don't have horse shows every weekend, and it's harder for them to get to Class A horse shows. But nonetheless, if you want to go to a Class A horse show, or you want to go to a national championship horse show or a regional horse show, you have to sell that to your customer. What is the benefit to you to going to this horse show? What's the benefit of you spending the money? Are we increasing the value of your horse? Are we increasing the value or your talent level in competing against better and better horses to see where you lay in the United States? These are things that, you know, you have to sell to your customer as to what you're going to do. It was an easy sell to go to Midsummer Nationals. It was a national championship horse show. For us, it was in the middle of the country. It was a good time of the year because there wasn't anything else going on around it. So people wanted to go show. I've heard comments about this particular horse show going to amateur only, or this particular horse show just being a Class A horse show. I think that the way it's been done, I think it's been done a correct way. Something that we can actually sell to our customers and say, hey, would you like to go to this horse show? We're going to support AHA. You're going to exhibit your Arabian horse. You're going to compete at a national level. The horses that were in the arena last year in 2020 were incredible. The amount of talent that was with the horses and the people. And I'm not going to even step into the whole kids thing, because 1993, when we started Youth Nationals, we had kid horses and we had open horses. Now the kids are riding open horses, and they're riding them better than the professionals. And so there's really not a distinction between the two. This thing in the middle of the year like that was fantastic. The only thing that we were, as a professional, the only thing that we were taken back by is it's a longer horse show in the middle of the year. So we're on the road for 17 days going to this horse show. And so that was something that we needed to adjust to as professional. As far as the parents and the kids were concerned, or the adult amateur rider, they're on the road for 11 days because the show is 10 days long. They're there a day ahead of time, or maybe 2 days ahead of time. So it's a little bit different. From the professional standpoint, we're kind of waiting to see how the Canadian Nationals fit into this deal. I mean, being from Texas, we always run into the VS problem. And so we're always trying to figure out how to navigate our way to Canadian Nationals with being from a state that normally will have a case or two. But if that doesn't happen this year, because it doesn't happen every year, we have several regionals that have moved to the August dates. And so the east side of the country, there's region 14 that's going to be in August. The west side of the country is going to be region 8 that's in August. And then there's Canadian Nationals going to be in August. And so when you get home from a 17-day horse show and you have a 10-day turnaround to go to Canadian Nationals, we were kind of waiting to see how this dynamic plays out. I talked with Deb earlier this evening, was like, if you have a pie, is there enough to generate income for the whole pie, or are we going to chop this pie up too much? And I don't think there's a definitive answer to this until we do it. I think that we have to do it, and I think we have to figure it out. And after a year, you'll have the questions will be answered. But if we stand back and look at it and don't take action, I think we're going to be behind. And then 2 years from now, we're going to say, you know what we should have done? We should have done this. We should have done that. But I think right now is our time to go ahead and just take this thing and just keep running with it, because we have to find out where it goes.
Thanks, Josh. Katie, would you like to speak?
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. I went to both midsummer shows, and they were great shows. They were well attended. The horses, especially last year, were incredible. I think there's a lot of different, and reading the chats, a lot of people have put in some thoughtful comments, and I can understand a lot of different perspectives here. But, speaking just for myself, really, or, as an amateur, I think that anytime that we can support the mission as far as looking for ways to grow participation in the breed, that's what I think we have to do. The other thing that, I think is important to note too, is that larger and more competitive horse shows, I think, are what people want. And I think that there's also room for that. And not saying that we need another national title. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And looking at some of the other breeds, as Josh brought up, there are in the saddlebred worlds, the worlds is a standalone, as well as finals, and as well as, with the quarter horses. And it doesn't have to be a national title. You think that you can call it whatever you want to call it, but it's something that's on that national level and that same prestige, and not a Class A horse show. I also think there's a lot of movement that happens at that horse show that time of year, with people that are looking for horses then to take to U.S. nationals. So there's a lot of movement as far as sales go. A lot of people, it seems, over the last couple of years, brought horses to that show to sell. I don't know. I think too, keeping the youth the main focus of the show, and dividing that show up a little bit more to where you can have the adults in the beginning and the youth in the end. I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at this as not being a threat, but a way to take a show and recreate something very different than anyone else has. We don't have to do it the same way. Look at the debate that came up at convention this year of placing the top 10. Is that an opportunity to do something like that here and try that out and see how people like that? Again, just the midsummer portion, not the youth nationals portion. So again, I do think that there is an opportunity for a show like this to kind of reimagine how we as a breed support the mission of growth and participation, and not being at the detriment of regionals, and not being in complete competition. So that's just an opinion and thoughts, but I think we just need to use this as an opportunity, because you look at the financial impact that this has to the association. And I've seen in here, it's just, is AHA trying to make more money? We are AHA. And without AHA and the financial viability of it, it doesn't exist. And so I think that, where there are opportunities like this that have a huge financial impact to our breed, we need to find a way to make it work for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, this is one of those opportunities in a town hall to have, which I think we're at 234 of us that all have skin in the game. We all have a way to move AHA forward, and trying to figure out in a challenging world and with opportunities, what's going to be best. Because I'm trying to keep up the chat and y'all are typing really fast. So it's a lot to keep up with, but I'm trying. I will admit, during the convention, when y'all were doing the chat, I didn't get to see it till after. So this time I can actually see it. So I appreciate all of the thoughts out there, and I appreciate the collaboration and the fact that we are trying to do this together. We want what's best for the regions. We want what's best for Canada. We want what is best for AHA. And at the end of the day, those are the heavy discussions that your board is faced with. And we cherish each of your comments, and we appreciate what everyone is saying here. So with that, we're going to open it up to questions, and I think Kelsey's going to moderate that, and we'll do our best to get through some Q&A and have some quality conversation.
So you should be able to put your hands up as a participant if you wish to speak. Okay, I have Lorraine Powell is first. I'll have to unmute you, Lorraine. And you'll just have to unmute yourself, and then you should be able to speak. There you go. Whenever you're ready, Lori. Okay, I'm going to move to the next one and then we can come back. Lauren was the next hand that I had up. You should be able to unmute and talk.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I guess I really want to see how, as a business owner, as a businessman, how this aligns with AHA's strategic direction. I don't think, if we use the saddlebred, and I'll use your saddlebred example, I'm old. I remember when the saddlebreds had 7 great shows, they now have 2. And that cannot be used as an example of success. Their breeding numbers, etc., don't support. I mean, from the West Coast, San Diego, the shows on the Pacific Northwest, we no longer have saddlebreds at all anymore, because regionalization, the focus on a couple major shows has promoted, I think, the demise of that, because they have no place to show anymore. So when I look at AHA strategic direction, and I say AHA strategic direction in the next 10 years is what? To increase participation in local shows, that's one of them, because we spent the last year talking about qualifications. We want to see breeding increase. We want to make things more affordable. So when I think about what our strategies are, I don't see how this show supports geographic distribution, that it continues to promote youth activities at the forefront. When this show started, it started because youth needed that focus. They were so large. The youth was actually taking away from the US nationals, that, giving them that because it was growing. That's no longer the case. So if it's not growing, adding adult classes isn't promoting the growth of the youth. these are things that we have to say, how does these things start to align with the strategies? I don't think anything said tonight by a panel, like I don't see anybody that lives north of the Dixie line. I don't know, Cynthia might, but no one else does. How this actually promotes geographical distribution, how this promotes the ability to promote and develop that breeding and developing participation across and supporting that. And so I'd like some of those longer term strategies and how this addresses those strategies to be aligned before we can make those decisions.
Thank you, Lauren.
Dan?
Yeah, Lauren, I can understand what you're saying about that, but we go back far enough to where, like Josh said in '93, when we looked at the youth show was put on because, again, it quite frankly was making our U.S. nationals too long, too cumbersome, too big, and we couldn't do the right things by the youth. As far as geographic strategies are concerned, I have a little bit of question on why you would think that in one way, because we have horses that came to Midsummer from all over the nation to compete against horses from all over the nation. And so, by doing so, they really were across the board looking at horses that were being bred in a lot of different ways all over the country. And so those things met up at Midsummer. And that was a promotional thing, and I think was a very, very good thing for all of us. That's one. Two, as far as strategy is concerned, as far as the way we're moving AHA forward in a growth situation, it is incumbent upon us, all of us, to try to grow this breed in a lot of different ways. And what we're trying to do is offer another situation, if you will, another show, another venue, another way. I wish that I could say to you that we're going to breed 10,000 horses next year, and it doesn't matter whether they show or not. That's just not the way it is right now. Every demographic that we have, everything that we do at AHA, we try to follow what's taking place. And guess what? Everything that's turning right now, as opposed to when you and I were showing it, Josh, Cynthia, a lot of people that were on this phone call, is that we are a discipline-based breed now, not breeding Arabian horses. Okay, we're for Arabian horses, but we're breeding for a specific discipline. And when you breed for a specific discipline, you start looking at different ways to do that. And I think is that good or bad? I don't know. That's just the way that things are right now. And we're trying to expand that. And we have to, as AHA, look at different ways to do those things, from the way we try to go at these ranch riding shows, the ranch championships, everything else that we try to do is based on what we're trying to do, but it's discipline based, not just to breed an Arabian horse.
Lorraine, were you able to unmute? Okay, we'll move on then. Our next one is Josh Shildroth. You'll have to unmute.
Hey there, can you hear me, Kelsey?
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Just a quick question. I'm just wondering, when we look at this, and I'm going to use the term shadow, are we aware of the shadow that we're casting on this decision, that for many, the perception is that a decision was made on this and it's continuing to linger? Are we aware of the shadow that we're casting to our board of directors, our current members, and the other breeds out there? I guess I'd be curious to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. My next one is Debbie Price. You'll have to unmute. You should be able to speak, Debbie. Okay, I'm going to move to Leslie Summer. You'll have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I think everybody's made some really good points, but what I'll lead with is that at the end of the day, there will be no regionals, there will be no Class A shows, and there will be no AHA if we don't put dollars in the bank. And this show has been shown that it has been very successful with doing that. I think it is a fair statement to make that back when COVID hit and they came up with this idea, it was more than a Band-Aid for AHA at the time to help keep the lights on, pay the bills and whatnot. So I think, I understand the emotions of regionals and Canada. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, we have to pay our bills or there will be none of those other things to participate in. And this show is an excellent venue to be able to keep the youth show going and maybe add some more exciting things for them, all while putting dollars in the bank. That's it.
Thank you.
One thing that I think people should know is that the number of exhibitors in our youth actually went up. And the reason it did is because Josh said he came, I think, with 11 horses to Youth Nationals in 2019. But there's a number of trainers, both big and small, that don't have enough youth to make it affordable for the youth to go and pay for their trainer to be there for the time. And so if you have 4 or 5 youth in your barn and the rest of them are adult amateurs, what happened is that they were able then, the trainers were able to fill their trailer and come. And I think that's a big part of why this show is a success and why our youth numbers actually went up. And it's very hard to count who's a youth horse and who's an open horse or an amateur horse because some of them crossed over. But we know that the number of class entries went up for the youth. And we know the size of the classes because I'm involved now in the scheduling quite a bit. And when we finally could shut it off because we let the youth enter to the last minute sort of thing because of qualifications and stuff, then we were able to then, Sharon and I had to add 19 splits because some of the classes were so big. So we know that there were more youth there. And when we asked the question, they said, well, this is the first time our barn could come because, that we brought Sally and Sam and Joe along with us, and they obviously helped to pay the bills. And so I think that's one thing that I've been trying to watch the chats and see what people are saying as well. It's hard to pay attention and read at the same time, but I hope that helps to answer some of what people were asking.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next hand I had up was Christy Caspers.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. I've got 4 questions that I'd like specifically addressed so that I can have an understanding of where the board is sitting. First and foremost, is the question whether this is going to be a championship show or whether this is going to be a national championship show. It's been a common question that I've heard outside of the town hall as well as in the chat line. So I need to know specifically, is it going to be a championship show or a national championship show? That's the first. Second, what's the position of the Canadian National Show Commission? I would like to know officially, what is their position? Are they in favor of it being a show or a national championship, or do they have no position? Third, I want to know whether or not there's going to be some sort of a studied impact on the potential numbers as it relates to the regionals, both that have moved and the regionals that have not moved, so that we can be making a really smart business decision around how this is going to play out. And then fourth, I would like to know from the youth board whether they support this being a show versus a national championship show. And in the chat, Grace had indicated to me that they would need to go back to the board and discuss it and then come up with their position, as opposed to simply supporting the concept of midsummer. So those are the 4 specific questions that I would really like to get answered sometime either tonight or after this. Thanks.
Sure, Christy, now seems like a great time. Let me tackle a couple of them for you. The question on, is it a championship or a national championship? Yes, that is the question, because the board did vote overwhelmingly to go forward with a championship show. Then as staff and the youth commission tried to operationalize that, we hit a few snags. And in doing that, to make it work, and the way it's worked the last couple of years, is to make it a national championship show. That is really where the nuts and bolts of this came from. Okay, so can we make it a show on its own? Yes, and it's going to take more time than we have to deliver a show for our members in July of 2022. So yes, that is a distinction in the conversation. You're spot on with that. And so to your question number 4, in terms of the youth support of that board, maybe that board needs to get back together and discuss that particular point as to why, from a functional standpoint, what our staff can deliver that our members want. That's a fair question. As for question number 2, the position of the Canadian Nationals, I do not know if that commission has taken an official position one way or the other. And as this has really grown from all of the organization our members have faced, what started as what to do with the Canadian classes that led to Resolution 1620 and led to those decisions. Now it's really taken an identity of its own. That's at least what a lot of us, boots on the ground at the horse show, we're hearing, is that this is its own horse show. So we can ask the Canadian Commission for a position, sure. And then on your third question, which was about business decisions, absolutely. And actually one of our board members posed a lengthy list of questions the day before Thanksgiving that our staff and people are really trying to get at answering. And some of the metrics that this individual posed, we don't have mechanics to track those metrics, but we're certainly going to look at developing how we can. So in terms of running AHA as a business, that's absolutely a huge decision, or not decision, a huge driving force of the board, because we do want AHA to be a member-driven and value-driven organization that makes sound business decisions. So thank you for your questions, Christy. I appreciate it.
Is it all right if I make a comment about the youth board real quick?
Mhm.
Okay. We are in agreement with the Midsummer Nationals continuing. We don't know necessarily yet about championship or national like awards for the adults yet. We know for the youth specifically, though, we do want to make sure it's still a national show for the youth. I do know that because we'd like to make sure that aspect stays the same for us youth. We appreciate that, and we really just want to make sure the youth still have their thoughts heard and stuff like that at that show. So that's what I'd need to get back to them on. So yeah.
Grace, there's no issue that Youth Nationals will remain the show it has been, and we're trying to keep improving that. So Youth Nationals is not in question. It's just what to do with Midsummer. And I know we're running out of time, but one of the things too that you have to look at is that we were able to, in order to run Midsummer and to run youth, we were able to utilize all of our facilities and our people to the best of the advantage. So what we did is we could intermingle all of those specialty classes, and we know that the specialty classes are growing. And, I saw a comment that Ranch Horse Championships only had 55 horses. That's true, but it also put out so much goodwill. And then I sat in the Working Western ring at US Nationals this time and watched all those ranch horses, and it's incredible how fast that division is growing. So my point in all of this is that, if we were trying to do Midsummer and it's not a national show, then it has to be somehow condensed into those 4 days, which then makes it not as cost effective, obviously, because we can't intermingle the specialty classes. So you can't run dressage, and you have to finish all of it in dressage and in hunter jumpers and in trail and all of that before you can start the next show. So if it's not a national championship show, all of it will have to be contained just in the time we have, which means that we would have to cut down the number of classes that are offered, because we can't then intermingle all of those specialty classes. So that's part of what we came back to, with our conclusion that it isn't going to be able to be as great as it's been, because we would have so many restrictions on how we can do this. And I wrote a Q&A and a white paper that Kelsey's going to post for everybody. So it kind of answers some of the questions too that I think people are asking, but it's, we really did try to make this work. And so if we don't call it a national championship and we call it the World Show, that's fine with me. It's just that when you have 1,200 horses there, it's more than a Class A show. And so you need to reward those people, because, I think Katie and Josh both talked to the quality of horses that were there was phenomenal. I mean, some of those classes were just like, wow. And so if it's just semantics that you don't want it to be called a national show, but you still have it at that level, that's fine, because from the back scene, we can still run it as a national coded. We just wouldn't call it that if that's what people are getting stuck on. So thank you.
So we have some more hands up. The last one we're probably going to be able to take is Gerald. I'm going to You'll just have to unmute Gerald.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, so as chair of the Canadian National Show Commission, we feel that, with the Midsummer Show, that it is definitely going to have an impact on our show. Whether the impact being a national championship show versus a championship show, I can't predict what that's going to be. We can only see what happens as things unfold. Midsummer was created at the beginning of the pandemic to give an avenue for our members to be able to show and, during the year, because everything had been shutting down. And of course, the Canadian border was shut down. Going into the second year, we were optimistic that for this year we would have had a show, but as the cards, came about, that wasn't going to happen again because again, the border is still closed. And now with the border opening up, we're anxious to get going with our show again, and we want to invite everybody here. There will be an impact on the show. I can't deny that, and all of our commission members recognize that. The other thing I want to talk about, though, and first I'd like to preface this with, I have a huge respect for everybody who works in Kelsey's department, Marlene, and everybody else works in the office to try and make these shows come together. I personally have a hard time thinking that we need to make a decision on whether this is a national championship show or championship show because of what our systems can or cannot do. To me, that's wrong. We need to be able to, I know we have to work within certain rules, but at the same time, we run concurrent shows. We're running 2 shows at the same time. So I just feel it's wrong for that decision having to be made based on those limitations that we're faced with at this point in time. And as I say, I respect Kelsey and Marlene and everything, all the hard work that they do. And yes, it may make something different, make it more difficult, but let's look at that and see if there is really ways that we can make this work and not have to do double entry and things where they're scheduled and whatever, and become creative and think out of the box as far as how we deal with some of those issues. So yes, to everybody who's on the call, we're going to move forward, and the only thing that's going to stop us is the good old border. And the other thing that's come up in the chat lines talking about VS, and VS has been a thorn in our side for a long time. Some years we have it, some years we don't. If you look at the stats this year, there's no VS cases reported in the US this year. Last year there was a few. Who knows what next year is going to be? 2019 was by far the worst that we'd ever had. And a lot of people got hurt by that, and that's incredibly unfortunate. But we can't control that because, again, it's a government decision that we're faced with, and we've tried to make it better for our exhibitors, but they don't listen. So, and I can't do anything about that. So, thank you, everyone.
Okay, Deborah, we're at about 6:58, so I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to address.
Well, we all know we're a passionate group, and we want to have these town halls, whether it's this topic or down the road, other topics we're going to have. You have, I think, if I looked in the participants, I think you have pretty much maybe one who couldn't make it from the board that's listening to this call tonight, because that board's going to make, decisions that are heavy for the organization, and they take that duty very, very seriously, as do all the volunteers that work for this and all of our members. And so nothing is going to be entered into easily or hastily, and with still a passion to have all the levels succeed. I mean, you all that know me, I am as entry level as it gets. I'm bringing in newcomers every day. Started 3 new ones this weekend. So from everywhere, from the beginning level all the way through our organization, we want to see success. Yes, I'm seeing in the chat, we want to build it from the ground up? Absolutely. That's where it started for each and every one of us. And so that's going to be taken in balance. I think, Grace, we might have to have a meeting of the youth board, before the other board meets. That might be a wise thing to do. I think continue conversations, and that was part of the balance of the calendar of this, was to have this call so that we have a couple of weeks for people to talk to the members of the board of directors before they go into a vote on December 13th. I think that's important. I think it's fabulous that so many people participated with us tonight. We always want more time. Lord knows, more calls, more time. I enjoy seeing all of you so much. That said, we still have to continue to move forward. So in terms of wrapping up tonight, it's out there as to what we can do. Cynthia said about the national level in terms of what, from an organization standpoint, we can do. And trust me, we're going to push forward and continue to move to have more opportunities and more innovation, for sure. We're hearing you all loud and clear, and that's awesome. So I truly want to thank everyone that was on this panel tonight. I want to thank all of you. And this chat is going to be shared with the board of directors so we can review and read all of those messages, because I'm with Cynthia. I couldn't keep up. Mine right now says there's another 30 messages that I haven't gotten to. So we're going to read those, and we absolutely thank you. We cherish each one of you. We also are going to be sending a survey to the last 2 years of Youth Nationals Midsummer exhibitors. So be on the lookout for that if you attended the show. And then we're going to be posting a white paper that Cynthia mentioned and the Q&A on the website tomorrow, as well as this recording. So I truly thank you for all of your time and your energy and your attention to our AHA and to the future of the Midsummer Show. And however we all move forward together, all the regions, all the horse shows, all the newcomers. So with that, I think we'll call it a good night. And board, I'll be seeing you in a week or two. And thank you, everyone. If I don't see you, have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season.